Have you ever wondered about the strangest professions that really existed in history? Let us take you on a journey back to medieval England, where a peculiar profession called sin-eating was popular. In this era, people were deeply rooted in superstition, and one of the most intriguing practices revolved around the passing of a loved one. It was believed that the sins of the deceased could be transferred to those who attended their funeral. To prevent this, a person known as a sin-eater was hired. Their responsibility? To eat bread and drink ale over the body of the deceased. In this strange yet poignant ritual, the sin-eater symbolically took on the sins of the departed, absolving them of their misdeeds, and allowing them to rest peacefully. This prevented the sins from latching onto the mourning attendees, offering them a form of spiritual protection. Imagine that, a profession dedicated to eating away sins. Quite a heavy meal, wouldn't you say? Moving along in our historical journey, we find another unusual job in the Middle Ages. The spit boys. Picture a bustling medieval kitchen, the sizzling aroma of roasting meat filling the air. Now imagine being the one responsible for that deliciously cooked meat. The spit boy, a profession as peculiar as it sounds, was just that person. In a time before the convenience of modern kitchen appliances, the spit boy's job was to turn a spit, a long rod used to hold meat over an open flame continuously. This was to ensure that the meat cooked evenly on all sides, a task that required both patience and endurance. The spit boy would stand next to the scorching flame, turning the spit with his bare hands, ensuring each side of the meat kissed the flame just right. No easy task, I assure you. Truly, a profession that required a hot hand and a cool head. Sailing forward from the Middle Ages into the Age of Sail, we encounter young boys with a dangerous job, the powder monkeys. These weren't your typical mischievous youngsters. No, these were boys, barely out of their infancy, who embraced a life of risk and responsibility. Their role? They were the vital link in the chain of command during naval battles. Their job was to dash, duck, and dodge through smoke-filled decks, carrying gunpowder from the ship's magazine to the roaring cannons. In the deafening chaos of war, these pint-sized daredevils were the lifeblood of the ship's firepower. Their name, powder monkeys, was not just a term of endearment, but a reflection of their agility and quickness, much like the nimble primates they were named after. And all this while the threat of enemy fire, explosions, and the unforgiving sea loomed large. Imagine that, children hardly older than toddlers, working in such perilous conditions. As we move into the 19th century, the demand for medical education led to a dark and eerie profession: body snatchers. These were individuals who made a living from the dead, literally. Their job? To exhume the recently buried bodies and sell them to medical schools for dissection. Imagine the scene under the cover of nightfall. Body snatchers would creep into graveyards, armed with shovels and lanterns. They would dig up fresh graves, and the bodies within would become their illicit merchandise. A morbid trade, but one that was driven by necessity. Medical schools were desperate for bodies to dissect for educational purposes. And with legal sources often unable to meet the demand, body snatchers found a lucrative, albeit gruesome, market. The public was understandably horrified by this profession, and body snatching soon became a capital offense. But it was a risk some were willing to take for the sake of science and education. Certainly a profession that stirs the macabre, wouldn't you agree? Finally, let's circle back to medieval England, where we encounter a profession that's quite literally dirty: the gong farmers. In an era before the convenience of indoor plumbing, people relied on chamber pots for their sanitary needs. Once these pots were filled, they had to be emptied, and that's where the gong farmers came into the picture. These individuals bore the unenviable task of collecting and disposing of this waste. But waste disposal was only half the job. The gong farmers, resourceful as they were, found a way to turn this undesirable chore into a profitable venture. They sold the collected waste to farmers, who used it as fertilizer, closing the loop in a rather organic manner, if you will. It was a dirty job, but someone had to do it. A profession certainly not for the faint of heart or weak of stomach. From eating sins, turning spits, carrying gunpowder, grave robbing to collecting waste, history has seen some truly bizarre professions. The sin-eaters of medieval England, who were believed to absorb the sins of the deceased by eating bread and drinking ale over their bodies, were a peculiar part of funeral rites. The spit boys, ever diligent, turned meat on a spit over an open flame to ensure even cooking. Then there were the powder monkeys, young boys who bravely carried gunpowder to cannons during naval battles. In the 19th century, the body snatchers emerged. exhuming fresh graves to sell corpses for medical research and education. And let's not forget the gong farmers, who collected human waste from chamber pots and sold it as fertilizer. Each of these professions, as strange as they may seem, served a purpose in their time. So, the next time you think your job is strange, remember these professions and think again.